I did probably hear, here and there, I probably heard about Muslims or Islam, but it was mostly in the context of the war or terrorism. And to me, all that stuff seemed unimportant. And so I mostly just ignored these kinds of conversations. Getting a little bit older, when they asked me, why did you become a Muslim? It's a decision that I made that was based on logic, it was based on reason, but it was also based on things that I can't describe. I don't have words for. Something like intuition and something along the lines of just life experience, just analyzing my life. And it also involved a lot of reflection and a lot of prayer. And so I guess I'll just take it from the beginning, and we'll kind of address this somewhat chronologically, because that's how it happened to me. And that's probably the best way to explain it so that you guys can also understand.
Saya menerima banyak pesan dari teman-teman lama yang bertanya, mengapa Anda menjadi Muslim sekarang? Pertanyaan ini memiliki banyak dimensi dan sudut pandang yang berbeda. Saya akan mencoba menjawabnya, meskipun ini cerita yang panjang. Namanya Daniel. Saya lahir di Missouri, Amerika, dalam keluarga kelas menengah yang mencintai saya. Hingga saat itu, agama tidak memiliki peran besar dalam hidup saya, dan saya melihat ini sebagai berkah dan kutukan. Ini memberi saya kesempatan untuk menemukan jati diri tanpa ada yang dipaksakan.
Memory of God must have been around the age of 5 or 6. And I remember praying with my sister, older sister, and we'd pray together before we go to sleep. And I remember she would kind of lead the prayer, and I'm not sure, I haven't talked to her about this since. I don't know where she learned this from, but I remember praying together with her, praying to God and asking God that our family is going to be okay, our family's safe, and everything going to be good. And I remember it felt good to do that. It felt good. There was something honest about it. There was something true about it and comforting. And
pertama kali saya merasakan hubungan dengan Tuhan adalah ketika saya berusia sekitar 5 atau 6 tahun, berdoa bersama keluarga saya sebelum tidur. Rasanya sangat nyaman dan benar, tapi saat tumbuh dewasa, kebanyakan teman sekolah saya adalah orang Kristen, dan suasana di gereja tidak pernah terasa cocok untuk saya.
As I grew up, most of the people I went to school with were Christian, some form of Christian. A lot of them were Protestant Christians, some Catholics, here and there. And I myself had a few experiences visiting churches, after being invited, but, the vibe never felt right to me, even as a kid. It seemed silly. And it seemed inauthentic. I felt like, you guys don't all really believe this, do you? Really? It seems silly to me, honestly.
Saya tidak memiliki paparan Islam selama masa kecil saya, dan sebagian besar informasi yang saya ketahui tentang Islam adalah dalam konteks perang dan terorisme. Saya tidak begitu peduli pada saat itu. Pada usia 12 atau 13 tahun, orang tua saya bercerai, dan agama tidak lagi menjadi bagian dari hidup kami.
I did probably hear, here and there, I probably heard about Muslims or Islam, but it was mostly in the context of the war or terrorism. And to me, all that stuff seemed unimportant. And so I mostly just ignored these kinds of conversations. Getting a little bit older, at the age of 8 years old or so, my parents got divorced. And I didn't really know how to feel about that when I was a kid. But looking back and knowing what I know now, it very clearly happened because a lack of foundation in my parents' marriage. And like I said, we just had no religious conversations in the house at all.
Ketika saya berusia sekitar 17 tahun, perjalanan spiritual saya dimulai. Saya mulai mencari makna dalam berbagai agama dan spiritualitas timur, namun juga terlibat dalam gaya hidup yang tidak sehat. Saya mencoba berbagai hal seperti yoga, veganisme, obat-obatan terlarang, dan kehidupan nomaden.
And once I got to be about 17 years old, this is when my spiritual journey really began. And of course, cliche, when I think about it, it had to start about the time I first started smoking marijuana. I had experiences with smoking this plant, and I'm not saying that's good, of course not, but that's just the reality of my story. I remember just kind of being guided to do yoga and this kind of stuff, and that led to learning about Buddhism. I'm reading a bunch of books from Alan Watts, Thich Nhat Hanh. I'm doing Kundalini yoga in my room. I'm just trying to learn everything I can about this, and this is sort of like me opening up into the world of the spiritual world and thinking, oh, okay, there is.
Saya merasa kehilangan dan terjerumus dalam kebingungan. Pada titik terendah dalam hidup saya merasa terdorong untuk mencari jawaban yang lebih baik. Saya berhenti makan vegan, mulai belajar Muay Thai, dan memutuskan untuk menjadi seorang pendeta Kristen Ortodoks. Tapi setelah beberapa waktu, saya merasa bahwa keyakinan saya tidak sesuai dengan apa yang sebenarnya saya butuhkan.
At some point in this crazy Eastern idea searching phase, I found myself in Thailand, and I'd say it was here in Thailand that I sort of hit a rock bottom. Long story short, I became Orthodox Christian and all this, but looking back, I realized that I very clearly rushed into. Regardless, I was going to church, every Sunday, and I was even started studying at the seminary to potentially become a priest myself. And once I started getting deeper into the studies, I started really asking myself, do I actually believe this? Do I really actually believe this? Because if I do, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to become a priest, go all the way. And if I don't, then I need to reassess my life, right? And the more I thought about this, do I really believe this or not? The answer was no.
Ketika saya merasa semakin tersesat, seorang teman mengenalkan saya pada Islam. Saya awalnya skeptis, tetapi ketika saya mulai mempelajarinya dan membaca Al-Quran, semuanya mulai jelas. Al-Quran penuh dengan ajaran bijaksana dan solusi yang saya cari dalam hidup saya. Hukum Tuhan memberi saya pedoman untuk menjalani hidup saya dengan benar. Pergumulan panjang ini akhirnya membawa saya ke Islam. Saya mengucapkan syahadat pada tanggal 3 Desember tahun 2022, dan sejak itu, hidup saya telah berubah. Saya memiliki pedoman yang kuat dan hubungan langsung dengan Tuhan. Ini adalah pengalaman yang merendahkan hati, dan saya bersyukur atas perjalanannya.
Then it all begins, right? I first became curious about Islam when I saw a friend of mine posting YouTube videos about it. And I'm sure most of you guys know my friend Bobby's Perspective on YouTube, and we'd been friends already for a year or two, and we'd had a few conversations here and there. We always were kind of into the same things and resonating with the same kind of things, and I respected him a lot, and I thought he had a good rationality, and he was very articulate. He was just a solid guy that I respected and trusted. What's Islam based on? What's Islam based on? Okay, the Quran. Okay, well, who wrote the Quran? I read. Nobody wrote it. It's from God. Well, how do we know it's from God? And then I research. Well, it's impossible for a man to have written. Well, the Quran's full of dangerous teachings and violence, right? And then I research, I read it. No, it's actually full of clear and logical solutions to all the problems that I had in my own life and all the problems I see that humanity faces as a whole.
Kisah perjalanan hidup Daniel yang penuh tantangan adalah bukti bahwa kita semua dapat menemukan jalan kita sendiri menuju cahaya dan makna dalam hidup. Meskipun perjalanan menuju kebenaran mungkin panjang dan penuh rintangan, semangat untuk mencari, belajar, dan tumbuh adalah kunci. Ingatlah, saat Anda merasa tersesat atau kehilangan, itu adalah peluang untuk menemukan diri Anda sendiri. Terkadang, perubahan besar dalam hidup datang setelah kita berani menghadapi pertanyaan-pertanyaan sulit dan mencari jawaban yang sebenarnya. Ingatlah bahwa setiap perjalanan dimulai dengan langkah pertama. Jika Anda merasa tertarik untuk menjelajahi agama atau mendalami aspek kehidupan yang lebih dalam, lakukanlah dengan tekad dan kerendahan hati. Semoga cerita Daniel menjadi inspirasi bagi kita semua untuk tidak takut mengikuti panggilan hati kita dan mencari kebenaran yang lebih tinggi.